Hey everyone, Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton here with our weekly update on social media. So much going on this week as we come up to Christmas. Corruption in D.C. never sleeps. Corruption in Washington and across the country continues. But there's been some good news. Director Wray, the FBI director, has announced his resignation. I'll have reaction to that. Judicial Watch exposed corruption at the Fani Willis operation targeting Trump. It was a Judicial Watch litigation that forced some startling admissions from her. Plus, finally, the DOJ's Inspector General issued material or report on January 6th, which is really concerning, and I'll give you some details on that. We also had a great, an important court hearing this past week for First Amendment rights. So much going on, so let's just get right into it. First up is the issuance of a report by the Inspector General of the United States that confirms, as I've noted online, essentially, let's go to the tweet that I mentioned there. Let's cut to the heart of it. They had 26 confidential human sources on the grounds of the Capitol on January 6th. And as I note, the FBI had a platoon of operatives on the Capitol on January 6th. And as Julie Kelly, our friend, notes, the IG claimed 26 FBI informants were in D.C. on January 6th. And so this report was issued this week. It's long been delayed. And the report mostly focuses on the FBI's use of confidential human sources, to failure to, despite telling Congress otherwise, to ask about intelligence concerning January 6th from its various field offices. But what caught everyone's attention is, and what I think is really a dishonest report in some respects, the admission that there were confidential human sources on the Capitol grounds on January 6th, including several who entered the U.S. Capitol, which, according to the Biden Justice Department, is the equivalent of committing a terrorist act, and sufficient to warrant unprecedented types of criminal prosecutions at the federal level, none of which occurred towards these confidential human sources. And the report details that in the following section. Well, let me see what the press release says about it. Oh, this is the kicker. No undercover FBI employees at protests or at the Capitol on January 6th, as if that was the only concern. I mean, what the left is saying is that because the IG found no FBI employees, all the so-called conspiracy theories about January 6th is wrong. Of course, they delineate the so-called or narrow the so-called conspiracy theory to just one issue at all, one issue only, while ignoring the broader issue, which is that the report confirms that there were paid operatives of the FBI on the grounds of the Capitol, monitoring American citizens in their exercise of First Amendment rights, and also present at what the Justice Department and the political left media complex here in Washington, D.C. has told us was the worst day and worst attack on democracy in American history. And yet the IG focuses on, well, they weren't FBI employees. Well, they were paid operatives of the FBI. It's like the FBI saying, well, it wasn't the FBI that wrote the Steele report. We just paid Chris Steele to write the Steele report targeting Trump. We found no evidence in the materials we reviewed or the testimony we received showing or suggesting the FBI had undercover employees in the various protest crowds. Well, isn't that nice? Well, what about the confidential human sources? Yes. The report also details our findings regarding FBI confidential human sources who were in D.C. on January 6th. Again, written in a way to exonerate the FBI as opposed to hold it accountable. The review determined that none of these FBI CHSs, confidential human sources, were authorized by the FBI to enter the Capitol or restricted area or otherwise break the law on January 6th. Well, they're still responsible if they did that under their theory of the law. Why? Why weren't they prosecuted? Certainly the ones who entered the Capitol. Nor was any CHS directed by the FBI to encourage others to commit illegal acts on January 6th. Okay. Does that answer the question whether confidential human sources paid by the FBI encourage others to commit crimes? No. Does it confirm or give us details as to whether the confidential human sources themselves committed crimes? No. So as far as I'm concerned, it's garbage. Thankfully, that was just the press release. I've got the full report here. I'll throw that out later. Page 77 of the IG report, findings regarding FBI confidential human sources who were in D.C. on January 6th, including 3 that had been tasked to report on predicated subjects believed to be attending the rally. So some were tasked to follow people into D.C., again, who were exercising their First Amendment protected rights. Our investigation determined there were a total of 26 FBI confidential human sources from a wide range of FBI field offices in D.C. on January 6th in connection with the events on January 6th. Our review found that no FBI confidential human source was authorized to enter the Capitol or a restricted area or to otherwise break the law on January 6th, nor was any confidential human source directed by the FBI to encourage others to commit illegal acts on January 6th. Of the 26 who were in D.C. for the events, the records we reviewed show that 4 confidential human sources entered the Capitol on January 6th, 13 entered the restricted area, and 9 attended January 6 events but did not enter the Capitol or restricted area or otherwise engage in illegal activity. So that doesn't answer the question about whether the 13 plus 4 to 17 engaged in illegal activity. As noted previously, none of the confidential human sources that entered the Capitol or restricted area on January 6 have been prosecuted to date. Okay? Footnote number 97. So look at footnote number 97. We can draw that up on the screen here. I'll come up and read it for you. Footnote 97. After reviewing a draft of this report, the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office, which is run by a Biden appointee, U.S. Attorney Graves, stated in its response to the OIG, the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office generally has not charged those individuals whose only crime on January 6, 2021 was to enter the restricted grounds surrounding the Capitol, which has resulted in the office declining to charge hundreds of individuals, and we have treated the confidential human sources consistent with this approach. Okay, the scope of this review did not include prosecution decisions, including as to the FBI confidential human sources made by the D.C. USAO after the riot on January 6, 2021. So again, the IG has not investigated what many people believe the abuse of power by the Biden gang to prosecute in a selective way U.S. citizens versus FBI confidential human sources. And let's go back to that. Let's go back to that footnote. What does the footnote not say? It references has not charged whose only crime was to enter the restricted grounds. What about the confidential human sources and the Americans who entered the U.S. Capitol who've been charged? Why weren't the confidential human sources charged there? So here we have a dishonest, disingenuous response, at least as presented by the Office of Inspector General in the report, where they avoid the key issue as to why there was selective prosecution of American citizens who entered the U.S. Capitol, but not of FBI-employed confidential human sources. In our experience, if you're a confidential human source for the FBI, it means they're paying you money. These folks are making a living, in part, working for the FBI by providing them information. So what this means to me, all of this, that the IG is a waste. So let's get rid of that. And as I've noted previously with IG reports, they're both exposés and cover-ups at the same time. So here you have the modified limited hangout, the Nixon phrase, right, of the detail that there were at least 24, a platoon of FBI operatives on the U.S. Capitol grounds on January 6, 4 of which entered the U.S. Capitol, according to the Justice Department, which would have been necessarily a crime. They weren't prosecuted. Many other Americans were. But a cover-up at the same time. So the IG report is both an expose, which is the problem with most IGs in my experience. The IG report is both an expose and a cover-up at the same time. So it exposes FBI misconduct and special treatment by, or disparate treatment between American citizens who are Trump supporters and FBI operatives who are paid by the FBI, and withholding an analysis of that and details about what these confidential human sources actually did and who they were targeting and why on January 6th. And details about whether they actually committed crimes. Did they induce anyone to commit a crime? Encourage? We don't know that. And why didn't the IG figure that out? Because, in my experience, and it's now your experience because you can go read this IG report, which I just threw on the floor. It's a cover-up. And it's just a further reason for President Trump to, in my view, commute the sentence of every single January 6th defendant the minute he gets into office. I mean, look at what Biden did. I did a tweet on this the other day. Look at what Biden did. He's pardoning 38 people with non-violent crimes who have demonstrated remorse and rehabilitation. I'm commuting the sentences of nearly 1,500 others, many of whom would have received lower sentences today. Well, that's disingenuous. So 1,500 people had their sentences commuted on one day, which the White House is boasting to be the biggest number ever in the modern history of the presidency. And in my view, as I point out in that tweet, I'm looking forward to President Trump pardoning the January 6ers. You know, Biden is playing the pardon game. He illicitly, in my view, pardoned his son, I think in a constitutionally suspect way. And now every corrupt politician in town is lining up for preemptive pardons by Joe Biden, and he's considering them. The execrable Bill Clinton, one of the most corrupt presidents to sit in office, he was on TV earlier this week promoting a pardon for his wife, his co-conspirator in shakedown operations of foreign governments and agents and actors and companies. Talk about RICO. Might as well be asking for a preemptive pardon for himself. And we're supposed to be horrified that President Trump is thinking of January 6 pardons, and he's not backing down. I think we have video of him talking to an NBC Democrat activist, so-called journalist, the other day. Do we have that video that we talked about? We have one on the January 6ers where I'm watching. We're
going to look at everything. We're going to look at individual cases, yeah.
Okay.
But I'm going to be acting very quickly.
Within your first 100 days, first day?
First day.
First day.
Yeah, I'm looking first day.
Issue these pardons.
These people have been there. How long is it? 3 or 4 years?
Okay.
You know, by the way, they've been in there for years, and they're in a filthy, disgusting place that shouldn't even be allowed to be open.
So I tell you, if you agree with President Trump, who ran on providing pardons to the January 6ers, comment one way or the other below. I encourage you to spread the word about this issue. The pardons of Trump are, the planned pardons by Trump of the January 6ers are even more justified as a result of this DOJ report and everything else that we know has been going on in this town. So the IG has confirmed that 26 FBI operatives, paid operatives, confidential human sources, were up on Capitol Hill on January 6th. And I tell you, Kash Patel and Pam Bondi need to figure out what went on, or any other lawyer appointed by the president. Because I tend to think that even if it's run by Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, who are both great individuals, who I know, institutionally, I don't know if they can even get it done institutionally to look at their own agencies. I mean, Kash may have an easier time than Pam will because, you know, the FBI is a little bit more structured, and you know, he may be able to move it more quickly because they're a bit more organized and hierarchical. But the Justice Department, it's massive, so Pam may have a more difficult time. And again, you're asking the institutions in both cases to investigate themselves, and I don't know if that's going to work. So if I were Trump, I'd be appointing outside counsel, outside prosecutors to look at this. You need outsiders to investigate the insiders at the Justice Department and the FBI, certainly on the handling of January 6th. Now remember, they were trying to prosecute Trump on trumped-up charges that now have only been resolved because Trump's becoming president. If he hadn't been elected president, confidential human sources who violated the law for the FBI, while working for the FBI, it looks like, would remain unprosecuted, and they'd be trying to throw Trump in jail on so-called January 6 charges. I mean, that's how outrageous this is. So as far as I'm concerned, this IG report and these disclosures haven't gotten enough attention. Now, Judicial Watch is continuing to ask questions and has much litigation about what went on January 6th. But this IG report shows the FBI is broken, irredeemably corrupted. Same goes for the Justice Department. And that the January 6 investigations and prosecutions are hopelessly compromised by retaliatory politics and corruption. And what was the other clip you said I had that we were going to look at? Okay, so I'll save that for later. You know, and the other news this week, and I think there's a tie-in. Well, first of all, there was good news this week. Daniel Penny, who was I guess he was a former Marine, right? He's a former Marine. He's a veteran. He saved American citizens from being attacked by a deranged individual on the subway. And after he stopped the individual, he died. And Alvin Bragg, the anti-Trump left-wing Soros-backed prosecutor, prosecuted him rather than giving him a medal. And everyone was worried, rightly so, that the jury was going to find him guilty. And thankfully, they didn't find him guilty. They acquitted him. And he's a free man. I think did I do a comment on this too?
Hey everyone, great news, Daniel Penny.
Yeah, that's the video we want to play.
Everyone, great news. Daniel Penny was found not guilty. The American hero was prosecuted by crazed left-wing prosecutor Bragg after rescuing American citizens from a deranged individual on that subway train in New York City. They tried to corner the jury into finding him guilty, but thankfully justice prevailed today. Great news for the rule of law, and obviously great news for that American hero, Daniel Penny. Bragg needs to be held accountable. He's completely out of control.
Yeah, and he's got that ongoing prosecution against Trump. That is, as I recall now, I get confused as to what the options are related to these Trump prosecutions. But I think the judge there has kind of kicked the can down the road indefinitely, right? And they want to hold it over Trump for the next 4 years. So it's not just Trump who's being victimized for politics. It's citizens like Daniel Penny. And I'm glad he was acquitted. But I tell you, any American or anyone up in New York who wants to do what Daniel Penny did, which is to come to the aid of fellow Americans, citizens and non-citizens, everyone, just regular people on the subway, they're going to think twice about confronting a deadly or menacing threat on the subway. Because who wants to go through what Penny went through? I mean, he could be spending a good period of time in jail if the jury had gone the other way. And in New York, who knows how the juries are going to go? And this is why you need honest prosecutors, not prosecutors who prosecute someone based on race and politics, which is what Bragg does. But the Penny case is kind of the same. What is it? Two sides of the same coin in terms of political corrupt prosecutions by the city of New York, run by partisan Democrats who place politics and race baiting above the rule of law. I tell you, the left is dangerous to the public safety. Their policies are dangerous to the public safety. And I don't mean Democrats, I don't mean liberals, I mean the left. Now, there are too many Democrats who are leftists, but the issue isn't partisanship. The issue is this crazed ideology that is soft on crime, in many ways advocacy for crime. I mean, we see this with the shooting death of that poor man, Brian Thompson, right? The United Healthcare CEO, who was shot at 6:45 or so in the morning. He was walking out of his hotel, going to another event. There he is. He leaves behind a wife and 2 sons. And he was murdered by all accounts. He hasn't been convicted. He's been arrested and charged with it by this young man, Luigi Mangione, who, by all accounts, is a leftist, and now who the left has been celebrating. They were celebrating the shooting initially, and then this kid's pictures show up after he's arrested at the Altoona, Pennsylvania McDonald's, and the left starts celebrating him even more. We had a front page story on the New York Times calling him the hot assassin. And the less focus on the way he looks is kind of to slide in the support of his murdering a corporation CEO, specifically the head of a healthcare company. And the left likes nothing more than to distract from the problems caused by Obamacare and government regulation of healthcare. And they like the idea of a nice little political murder here to distract and to focus the blame on so-called terrible health insurance companies. And I'm not exaggerating. Look at what Elizabeth Warren said the other day. Do we have a clip of the Elizabeth Warren thing? I don't remember.
We've been talking a lot about this Luigi Mangione, the case about the United Healthcare CEO. People are very angry at United Healthcare, I think for good reason, denying care, and the whole system. And we were just talking in the previous block, killing a CEO is not the way you change. You have to regulate that, right? And so we've got attempts to try to rein in some of these big businesses. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which was your creation. The Trump administration wants to get rid of it. That is like protecting people from like credit card fraud. Yeah. What happens if that goes away?
So look, terrible for individuals, but stop and think overall about the social contract. Part of the deal in how we've kept this democracy, this economy, this country on a fairly steady path for more than 200 years has been that those at the top pay a little more in taxes, are a little less rich than they otherwise might be, and everybody else at least gets a chance.
Yeah.
And what happens when you turn this into the billionaires run it all is they get the opportunity to squeeze every last penny.
Yeah.
And look, we'll say it over and over. Violence is never the answer. This guy gets a trial who's allegedly killed the CEO of United Health. But you can only push people so far.
So this wasn't what I anticipated it being, but what she said was the following. Let me get it up on my dying cell phone. Warren told the Huffington Post the following. Violence is never the answer, but there you go. You can guess what's coming after that but people can be pushed only so far. This is a warning that if you push people hard enough, that they lose faith in their ability, in the ability of their government to make change, lose faith in the ability of people who are providing the health care to make change and start to take matters in their own hands in ways that will ultimately be a threat to everyone. So what she's saying is, you better do what I want you to do in terms of the socialist takeover of the economy, otherwise you're all going to be murdered. That's what she's saying. And of course there's a lot of pushback, and then she pretended to not say, pretend to be misunderstood, that violence is never the answer. We know what she's thinking. We know what the left is thinking, and it's perfectly consistent. The left, the extremist left, is murderous. And they see violence as a political tool. They always have and they always will. Remember, the second time Trump was shot, or nearly murdered, excuse me, he wasn't shot the second time. Thankfully, the Secret Service saw the shooter before he had a chance to shoot at Trump. The left immediately blamed Trump and said it was justified that they try to kill him. And then later, Brian Thompson, let's put his picture up again. The left is celebrating the murder of this man to promote their socialist takeover of our medical system. The left is promoting the murder of this man to promote government control of your personal choices when it comes to health care. The left is supporting the murder of this man in order to justify increasing your taxes. And they're trying to make a hero of this young man who is a crazed leftist. I've looked at his material. I've seen what his friends have been talking about. He was in Hawaii hanging out with a bunch of leftists, and he clearly was enthralled by a revolutionary violence targeting people like this poor man. As Brian Thompson's just doing his job, running a health insurance company. And the left is saying because health insurance companies sometimes deny claims, like government insurance does, Medicare denies claims, Medicaid denies claims, but the private sector isn't allowed to deny claims under the socialist communist rubric. And they are celebrating the death of an American citizen, and murder, the cold-blooded murder. Remember, as accused, Luigi shot him in the back. Oh, and by the way, if he's found guilty of murder in New York, the leftists there have essentially banned the death penalty. So this kid should be executed, but he won't be, even if he's found guilty. So this is left crime in America today. Let's hope he's convicted. The evidence will show. Let's see what the evidence will show, but presumably he's the bad guy and he's convicted. There are signs going up in New York highlighting and the radical left is putting up signs in New York calling for more murders of corporate executives. They wanted to kill Trump. They want to kill Supreme Court justices. Now they want to kill corporation heads. I've been warning you all of this rising violent communist revolution that's hijacked our media and our political culture. And it's I don't know what else to say in terms of showing you it's real. other than there's a dead man in New York with a mourning family, and the left right now, and you can go and see it, is celebrating his murder. Violence is never the answer, but that's the left's rallying cry to justify violence. Senator Warren, by the way, is going to be a senator for 6 more years at least. Oh boy. So let's go to the next topic, which is another huge topic, which is the lawfare against President Trump. Judicial Watch, through our litigation on a lawsuit against Fani Willis for documents about her collusion with Jack Smith, the Biden DOJ, and the Pelosi January 6th committee, we have proved that she was colluding with the committee, despite protesting earlier that there were no documents. And here is my initial reaction to the disclosures that I posted earlier this week.
Well, Fani Willis just confessed to having records of her communications with the January 6th Pelosi operation, the Get Trump operation. She only confessed to this yesterday thanks to a Judicial Watch lawsuit. Of course, when we first sued and began asking for these records, they told us they had no records. Well, it turns out that wasn't true. In fact, the only reason we got the confession yesterday was because a court last week found her in default. She didn't bother to answer the lawsuit under law as she was supposed to. But rather than turn the records over, as the court, I think, strongly suggested, she's using a loophole of exemptions and privileges to hide the records from the American people. Now, we're going to push back hard in court. Our heavy lifting will continue. But in the meantime, this really does confirm, A, she was in collusion with the Pelosi operation to get Trump. B, she has no respect for the rule of law. C, she has no respect for your right to know.
Yeah, that's a pretty good summary, and we did a little special report on it as well here. Let's run that.
A Georgia court forced Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis to confirm additional documents exist about communications Willis had with Special Counsel Jack Smith and the House January 6th committee. Willis admitted additional documents exist. However, she cited various legal exemptions for her reason not to release the documents Judicial Watch sued for. Willis, who spearheaded the prosecution against President Trump for his challenging the 2020 election results in Georgia, previously denied having any records. Just a week prior to Willis's confession, the Superior Court in Fulton County, Georgia entered an order granting a motion for default judgment against Fani Willis in Judicial Watch's lawsuit for communications Willis had with Special Counsel Jack Smith and the January 6th committee. Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton had this to say about Fani Willis.
Fani Willis is something else. We've been doing this work for 30 years, and this is the first time in our experience a government official has been found in default for not showing up in court to answer an open records lawsuit. Judicial Watch looks forward to getting any documents from the Fani Willis operation about collusion with the Biden administration and Nancy Pelosi's Congress on this unprecedented and compromised Get Trump prosecution.
Fitton also promised his followers on X, quote, "Heavy lifting Judicial Watch will push back in court against this disingenuous secrecy."
Yeah, so she gave us the response on Monday, late in the day. That was the deadline. And, the court ordered her to give us the documents or explain why they're being withheld. And she gave us a half-baked response. And I don't think it's sufficient to comply with the court order. Obviously, Judicial Watch's lawyers will look at it more carefully than I will as the layman Judicial Watch president complaining about the response. And as I said, we'll push back. But we've been doing FOIA. I've been doing FOIA long enough to know a deficient response when I see it. First of all, she didn't respond. It was the office of her unnamed person, I don't know who did it, According to the record, it is the Office of, what is it? Excuse me. Oh, I don't have it. Oh, wait, I was looking at the wrong page. Forgive me, everyone. Yeah, Open Records Department. What's the Open Records Department? We don't know. This is what she specifically said, or whoever the anonymous staffer wrote. Members of the district attorney's staff, having conducted a search as directed by the court, the office provides the following response. Regarding all documents and communications sent to, received from, or relating to Special Counsel Jack Smith or any employees in his office, a diligent search indicates that no such documents or communications exist. Regarding all documents and communications sent to or received from the United States House January 6th Committee or any of its employees, a diligent search indicates that any such documents and communications are legally exempted or accepted from disclosure, and then she cites the laws. But they did turn over one document that had been publicized already by the House, which proved that they were lying, which was a letter to Betty Thompson, who was the chairman of the Rump January 6th Committee, in which Willis herself signed a letter as part of an official request from her to access records that may be relevant to the criminal investigation. So Fani Willis told something false to Judicial Watch, which is that they had no records. And she confirmed, thanks to this court order and Judicial Watch's diligence, that that was false. They do have court record. They do have records showing what I interpret to be collusion with the Pelosi January 6th Committee to get Donald Trump. Isn't it interesting? The January 6th Committee is happy to help, it looks like, Fani Willis. They can't be bothered to investigate what the heck the FBI was doing invading its capital through confidential human sources, right? So this is a major development, and it's a key piece of evidence now we have that there was collusion stretching from Fulton County to D.C. to get Trump on unprecedented charges, and she's now citing privileges on a case that's dead in the water. All these privileges are citing are, there's a lawful basis typically to cite them. I'm being charitable and generous. But they're discretionary in the sense there's no requirement to hide these records from the American people, assuming there's a legitimate basis to do so, and I'm not assuming that at all. Oh, you can't see this. It will harm our investigation. It will give away our secrets. That's often an excuse, not a reason to withhold records. And we don't believe necessarily they did a diligent search. So when they say they have no Jack Smith records, I don't believe it. I mean, they already lied to me and to Judicial Watch and the American people that they didn't have any records at all, that they had no records at all. And now they just confirmed that they do have records. And remember, as we highlighted in the earlier reports, she was found in default. She didn't even respond to the lawsuit in court. And didn't want to follow the rules to reply under law to us. And the court found her in violation of the open records law as a result of being in default. Fani Willis is a lawbreaker. It's official. Again, the court finds defendant Willis, in her official capacity, is in default and has been since 11 April 2024. She never moved to open the default on any basis. She never paid costs, and she never offered up a meritorious defense. As far as I'm concerned, she's waived all of her privileges. You don't show up in court, and you've got these privileges you want to throw out. No, no, no. I don't think the court should let that happen. Judicial Watch and a state court forced Fani Willis to confirm additional documents exist about her collusion with the partisan Pelosi January 6th committee to get Trump. But Willis, citing legal exemptions for a prosecution that's essentially dead in the water, now wants to hide these records from the American public. And so we're going to be pushing back against this secrecy in court now. So we have to respond and try to hold her accountable, try to get these records, more information about them. But we don't even know they didn't tell us how many records there are. And, in federal FOIA cases, at least, the government, when they withhold records, they have to give you some information, enough information in terms of details about the records individually and which exemptions apply and how, in order for us to be able to ask the court to overrule the exemptions. Because they have all the secrets now. And so they need to disclose more information, I would argue, to Judicial Watch so we can adequately fight back, assuming that she's even allowed to assert these exemptions to withhold information. So this is an example of, even when they don't give us the information, the records, the admission that the records exist is huge, because they told us they didn't exist. And now we have confirmation there's more than just one letter. A letter they didn't even want to tell us about. Congress disclosed it. And there's more. How much work were they doing with the Pelosi operation to get Trump? Was Congress misusing its resources to have a prosecutor target the target of its investigation, Donald Trump, to harass him during the campaign? No wonder they all want pardons up there. No wonder Schiff wants a pardon. No wonder Benny Thompson wants a pardon. Is Pelosi going to get a pardon too? So a great victory for Judicial Watch, a great victory for the American people in terms of getting information about what I believe to be the worst corruption scandal in American history. The misuse of prosecutorial resources in federal and state courts to target President Trump and his allies. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, and it's information we would never have known but for Judicial Watch's heavy lifting, persistence, diligence. So those of you who supported Judicial Watch, this is what happens with your support. We're able to accomplish these successes for the rule of law and accountability. Now, does more need to be done? Yes, and we're committed to doing it. There's always more to be done. We can't prosecute Fani Willis, but we can hold her accountable through this process and educate the American people about what she's been up to. And hopefully people who are in positions to take action to hold her more accountable in different ways, they take notice. I mean, Congress has been following our lead here. They're demanding these records too, because they saw what was disclosed to Judicial Watch and what the court ordered here, or what was not disclosed to Judicial Watch. As far as I'm concerned, she's in contempt of Congress, or at least Congress is going to argue that, it looks like. So some great news there. As many guests, she's playing stonewalling, right? She's stonewalling Judicial Watch and the American people. But on the other hand, she's also disclosing as a result of Judicial Watch's strong legal action. So good news. More good news is the resignation of FBI Director Christopher Wray. He announced earlier this week that he's going to resign before Trump comes into office, which to me is a startling admission, cowardly really, that his work is political, that he wasn't engaged in neutral application and the fair administration of justice. Just like Jack Smith, he's going to run from office prior to Trump coming into office, because he doesn't want to be held fully accountable and potentially fired. If if Chris Wray was on the up and up, he'd say, well, I'm going to talk to the president when he comes into office and make the case as to why he should continue to keep me and let the chips fall where they may. Nope, but instead he's just going to quit and deny President Trump the accountability that would come from a direct firing. Chris Wray's FBI is a disaster. He's done nothing to fix the FBI, as far as I'm concerned, after Comey's disastrous FBI directorship, which was criminal in nature. And Wray did nothing to hold FBI agents accountable. The Justice Department did nothing. The Justice Department, by the way, is the agency in which the FBI resides. They're not separate agencies. One's a subset of the other. I mean, Wray's FBI raided Trump's home. I mean, I was on Fox the other day talking about it. No wonder Wray quit. The problem that Christopher Wray has is that he raided Trump's home. Yeah. His agents raided Trump's home. Yeah. And he knew, or should have known, there was no good faith-based reason to target Trump, let alone raid his home. I don't even know how he could look him in the eye, let alone expect to remain as FBI director, just under those narrow sets of circumstances. And as far as I'm concerned, if the FBI is able to, at the point of the Trump administration should be, in large measure, to make sure that the FBI, to the degree it remains, can't ever do to someone else what they did to Trump.
I think that's fair.
And then Trump had this to say about Wray shortly before Wray announced his resignation.
Are you going to fire the current FBI director, Christopher Wray, who you appointed?
Well, I can't say I'm thrilled with him. He invaded my home. I'm suing the country over it. He invaded Mar-a-Lago. I'm very unhappy with the things he's done. And crime is at an all-time high. Migrants are pouring into the country that are from prisons and from mental institutions, as we've discussed. I can't say I'm thrilled. I don't want to be Joe Biden and give you an answer and then do the exact opposite.
We're going to talk about that.
So I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to say is I certainly cannot be happy with him. You take a look at what's happened. And then when I was shot in the ear, he said, oh, maybe it was shrapnel. Where's the shrapnel coming from? Is it coming from heaven? I don't think so. So we need somebody to straighten. You know, I have a lot of respect for the FBI, but the FBI's respect has gone way down over the last number of years.
Don't you have to fire him in order to make room for Kash Patel if he is, in fact, confirmed?
Well, I mean, it would sort of seem pretty obvious that if Kash gets in, he's going to be taking somebody's place, right? And somebody is the man that you're talking about.
Well, Wray's gone, or will be gone. And this is the statement I issued for Judicial Watch upon his resignation. Wray's resignation is a good first step to cleaning house at the FBI. Under Wray's leadership, the FBI has become an enemy of transparency, the rule of law, constitutional government, and the civil rights of tens of millions of Americans. Judicial Watch and I witnessed firsthand the corruption of Wray's operation when FBI agents came to my home in what was an obvious retaliation for a criticism and lawsuits exposing their abuses. The FBI is irredeemably corrupt, from sitting on Hunter Biden's laptop in order to influence the 2020 election, the raid of President Trump's Mar-a-Lago home, the censorship of Americans, to the targeting of traditional Catholics. The FBI has been turned into the political police for partisan leftists. Accordingly, Wray should be subject to criminal investigation. And as sunlight is the best disinfectant, President Trump and his FBI director nominee Kash Patel, presuming he gets approved, and I think he will, should open wide the FBI files on its abuses of power targeting Trump and countless other American citizens. In the meantime, Judicial Watch will continue to investigate and sue the FBI for its truth, as I note, in the worst government corruption scandal in American history, which is the improper targeting of President Trump and other American citizens over the last several years. And Judicial Watch is the leader in providing oversight of the FBI. And I don't say that lightly. We do better oversight than Congress has, than this IG, Inspector General has, than the media have. I mean, just recent disclosures and activity by the Judicial Watch in terms of our overwatch of the FBI include, just last month, we sued the Justice Department for messages among top leaders of the FBI referencing the social media posts of the agent charged with investigating Trump's assassination. It looks like they were trying to scrub his posts because he was posting anti-Trump crap on all over social media. They wanted to cover it up. We uncovered the recording of a phone message left by an FBI special agent colluding with the Secret Service on the raid of Mar-a-Lago. And maybe subsequent activity, I don't know. The FBI opened a criminal investigation of Ashley Babbitt, our client. We're representing her estate, her widow, Aaron Babbitt. They investigated her after she was killed, listing 4 potential violations of federal law. They were investigating a dead person. Why? To find dirt on her to justify her unlawful killing. We had to sue for records of communications between the FBI and social media sites regarding foreign influence in elections, because the FBI was using that as an excuse to cajole social media companies to censor American citizens, which they did just before the election in 2020. Remember the Hunter laptop story? Suppressed through the FBI. Judicial Watch and our partners at Catholic Vote received FBI records showing top officials rushing to craft a public response to the leaked material that the FBI was targeting Catholics, targeting parishes and churches, the pews of our churches. And of course, we fought separately for records about the illicit raid of Trump's home, Mar-a-Lago. I mean, not to mention all the work we've done with the FBI and its targeting of Trump, over Russia. I mean, right now we're still in court against the FBI for text messages of the anti-Trump FBI agents, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. They're still stalling. It's 4 years. Ray's been a disaster in terms of ethics and transparency at the FBI. And I say this 20% jokingly. I don't know if the FBI can be saved or should be saved. I mean, to me, the question should be, is Kash Patel going to be the last FBI director? Do we need a successor agency, a pared-down version of the FBI? I'm not convinced that the FBI can be rescued. I think the Justice Department, we're probably always going to have a Justice Department. I mean, we certainly need a slimmed-down version of it, one that's policed by honest and ethical people. I mean, the FBI, I don't trust the FBI as far as I could throw it. I don't. I mean, Chris Wray's FBI happily worked with the Biden administration to target Trump supporters on January 6th. Nothing like it ever done by the FBI before. Raided the home of Trump. Previously, they were spying. It was just further reported and reconfirmed that they were spying on members of Congress and their staff who were critical of the FBI and their abuses. There's been virtually no accountability for the FISA abuses, the secret spying on Trump. The one FBI guy was targeted by Durham, Do Nothing Durham, and he got a slap on the wrist. So good riddance to Wray. But it's just, as I said, the first step in accountability. There's a lot more that needs to be done to restore, if it can be, the fair administration of justice to the FBI. And it's still a disaster. I mean, there's a story today about Luigi Mangione being ID'd by San Francisco police days before he was picked up. A San Francisco detective, according to the San Francisco Chronicle, the family of Mangione had placed a missing persons report. So it was in his mind, right? Because he had just gotten the report a few days or, shortly before his name or his image started popping up as being, when the NYPD started releasing pictures of him. And he said, I recognize this guy. This is the kid I'm looking for. And he called the FBI. He gave a tip to the FBI. No record of it. They didn't do anything with it. Now the FBI is saying, well, maybe it went to the wrong. Just more excuse making. And the FBI doesn't do its basic work. It doesn't do it well. Yet they've got unlimited resources targeting Catholics, targeting pro-lifers, targeting those who thought the 2020 election was stolen, targeting virtually everyone who came to protest on January 6th, whether they did something wrong or right. Literally, the FBI was paying people who were, it looks like, based on this IG report, committing crimes. And Chris Wray, that was all on Chris Wray's watch. So the real scandal is that Wray hasn't resigned yet or has been forced out yet. Congress could have done something. They could have said, you know what, FBI funding is contingent on new leadership. We're not giving a dime to the FBI unless there's new leadership. They didn't want to do that, though. But the American people spoke, and they wanted a new FBI director, and they knew that was in the offing when they voted Trump into office. And I praise Kash Patel. He is an American hero, and I think he's going to make an excellent FBI director. And it's going to be, no one's perfect, obviously, but light years beyond what we've been suffering through the last 2 decades of the DC corrupt culture class, what they think is what makes an FBI director good. No more. We need activists like Kash Patel. And I'm looking forward to his being FBI director. And of course, you can read all about, this is my break for a commercial, because we talk about it in my new book, Rights and Freedoms in Peril. And the FBI is one of those agencies that have put your rights and freedoms in peril. And I talk about it in this video. Hey everyone, be sure to get my new Judicial Watch book, Rights and Freedoms in Peril, in bookstores now. It's your guidebook to the next Trump administration. It explains where we've been in terms of the threats to our freedoms and our rights, and what President Trump and his team must do and the challenges they face. Elon Musk, Matt Gaetz, of course, the president himself, as our republic has been assaulted for so long by the leftist regime Democrats. Now, Rights and Freedoms in Peril is available in bookstores now. Important reading, essential reading, if you're concerned about the future of America. So thanks to the wonders of the supply chains, you can get this book in time for Christmas. It's a great Christmas gift for yourself, if you're a patriot, or an interested American, a curious American. A great Christmas gift for your children, your grandchildren, your brothers, your sisters, your spouses. It's a great book, Rights and Freedoms in Peril. Available. You go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You know how it works. You'll have it before you even click purchase, right? You can get it, the digital copy, obviously delivered immediately, or this is a nice hard copy because you're going to want to read and savor it and kind of look at the end notes and things like that to see to see all the receipts I bring in this fantastic new book. So I encourage you, and I say that, and I'm pushing this because it's a great way to support Judicial Watch. Every time you buy the book, you help Judicial Watch, both directly and indirectly by getting the word out about this work and why our country must be saved and needs to be saved given the threats from the left. So a great new book, Rights and Freedoms in Peril. And one of the reasons you should continue to support Judicial Watch is that we are just so persistent in pursuing justice for our clients. And one of our favorite clients, I guess all of our clients are favorites, right? It's like which one of your kids are your favorite kids. You know, they're all favorite in our separate ways. But we have a wonderful client, is a teacher, or was a teacher, out in Palatine, Illinois, or Palatine. And Jeannie Hedgepeth was fired by the school district for basically criticizing Black Lives Matter, the rioting, critical race theory, etc. She had worked there for 20 years. Jeannie Hedgepeth had worked in her school district for 20 years, and she posted comments on Facebook criticizing the riots, the violence, the lootings in Chicago, you know, and the aftermath of the George Floyd shooting. And the lower court, we sued on her behalf under the First Amendment in federal court. And the lower court said that, well, the school district was in its rights in policing the speech of its employees. We're like, well, how is that possible? She wasn't in school. She was posting during the summer to a private Facebook group, and it was about events of public importance, obviously, but it wasn't on school-related matters or material. I mean, if you can be fired for commenting about anything and someone doesn't like it as a school teacher, you have no First Amendment rights as a school teacher. So it was a really outrageous case, and so we were adamant that the court should deal with it. But instead, the lower court didn't want to, so it dismissed it, and so we appealed it to the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals. As we note, Hedgepeth made the posts on her private Facebook page while vacationing after the end of the school year, just as some of the most severe violence was occurring. In her post, Hedgepeth recommended studying Thomas Sowell. Tom Sowell is one of my favorite public intellectuals, great conservative and Black American. He's still out there doing. I think he's 90 years old. He's got to be. I think he's north of 90 now, and he hasn't stopped his excellent work. He's just great. I encourage you to go and find out more and read more Tom Sowell if you haven't already. And Jeannie just described him as, I say, a treasure and a truth seeker. And she praised political commentator and activist Candace Owens and talk show host Larry Elder. And I was just on Larry's show the other day. It's on our YouTube channel, on social media. You can watch it. And as we note, her First Amendment rights were violated by the firing. I mean, she said the following from the beach. I don't want to go home tomorrow. Now that the Civil War has begun, I want to move. An individual responded, follow your gut, move. Hedgepeth answered, I need a gun in training. So she was worried about her safety. An individual replied, me too. Another individual posted a meme that same day suggesting the rides could be stopped with a septic tank truck and pressure cannon. Hedgepeth reposted the meme, obviously in jest, adding, you think this would work? Why would you get fired for that? And here she's recommending Sowell. I highly recommend studying Tom Sowell, who is now retired and in his 80s, a treasure, a truth seeker, does real research and analysis, praises Candace, praises Larry Elder. Larry speaks the truth with great women, with a great sense of humor and facts, not feelings. And then she cites statistics used related to criminality and demographics, all sorts of debates about crime and race in America. Straightforward political commentary. And she got fired, supposedly because someone complained about it. Well, that's not good enough. That is, as we note in the appeal, providing a heckler's veto to your First Amendment rights, or specifically her First Amendment rights. All of her posts were on her personal Facebook page. None of her posts identified her as a teacher or an employee of a school district, the district issue here. Nor did Hedgepeth post them in her capacity as a teacher or a District 211 employee, which is the district. None of the persons with whom Hedgepeth exchanged Facebook posts were current students. So, really important case. So she asking for damages from the school district, the high school district, which is 211, so there's a school district and a high school district, and certain district board members and officials who participated directly in her firing. So she wants accountability. And so our lead lawyer here at Judicial Watch, Paul Orfanides, my colleague of decades, was out in Chicago arguing on behalf of Jeannie Hedgepeth at the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals. And it's available, the full hearing or oral argument is available online. And here's a select excerpt of Paul's arguments before the Seventh Circuit Appellate Panel.
We are here on the grant of summary judgment on plaintiff's Section 1983 claim for violation of her First Amendment rights. Plaintiff was a tenured teacher with 20-plus years of experience at Palatine High School in Palatine, Illinois. She was terminated for comments she posted on her private Facebook page following the unprecedented looting, rioting, and violence in Chicago and across the country in the aftermath of George Floyd's death in May of 2020. Her comments were neither at work nor about work, but instead addressed important current events. She posted them while vacationing in Florida after the school year has ended. If speech under those conditions can provide the basis for termination, then teachers effectively have no free speech rights left. No one was advocating violence or civil war. That's just a false construct. But that's the nature of the dispute. That's why a jury needs to decide how these posts should properly be interpreted. I don't think she was disparaging anyone's comment or views. She was advocating she was challenging the traditional notion, the traditional notion or the traditional views on race in the United States. And she did so citing scholars. Thomas Sowell. She encouraged an adult to read Thomas Sowell. That is somehow disparaging people's views? I don't think so. She cited accurate statistics. I mean, this is the fundamental dispute: is how do you interpret these posts? And we think that a jury has to decide that issue. It's not something that can be decided by a court. The overwhelming majority of the people that were complaining or contacting, communicating with the district were outsiders. They purported to be members of the community. We don't know that for a fact. Some were part of an organized campaign. Some were put together by a gentleman who was seeking to get elected to the board and did getting elected to the board, so he used this as a vehicle to advance his political ambitions. Our tally, 9 parents, 5 students. That's it. That's really not very impressive when you're going to weigh that against a teacher's First Amendment rights about speech that is not at work, not about work, not even made during the school year. She was on the beach in Florida, and if you actually read her posts, they are nothing like what they presented here. That's another factual dispute. Of those 9 parents, 4 were supportive.
Okay.
4 were critical. 1 was a comment.
Yeah, this is definitely in your briefs. Okay.
Okay, so Paul did a great job there. You can listen to the full argument I'm sure there'll be a link below, and we'll probably post the full argument on our website, our YouTube channel, and our other channels as well, on X, etc., Rumble. and you'll hear the judges' questions. And it's always hard to read these appellate panels. So what happens is typically you go as, so Paul's representing Jeannie Hedgepeth, who I understand was there at the hearing. And at the appellate level, there are 3 judges. And they ask questions. So it's kind of like what you hear at the Supreme Court. The appellate level is one level below jurisdictionally under the Supreme Court. And so the 3 judges were asking questions. And oftentimes you can get a feel for where the panel may be going based on the nature of the questions. Here it was difficult to tell. So we don't know what the panel's going to rule. But we know what the facts and the law are that we think should dictate how the panel rules, but we'll see if the judges agree with us. So I encourage you to listen to the full argument, and you'll hear both sides, Paul's side and the lawyer for our defendant opponent's side, but you'll, I think, be happy to hear and see evidence of Judicial Watch's great work in the courts. I mean, I'm happy to come on and talk about Paul's great work. I'm happy to come on and talk about Judicial Watch's work. But what I'm doing is I'm talking about the hard work of our lawyers and investigators, and I'm giving voice to them and highlighting for you what our team does on a day-to-day basis. It's not just me yelping and whining and complaining. It's me disclosing, explaining, and educating about the material that Judicial Watch has uncovered through its FOIA cases, about the importance of our litigation to uphold the rule of law and protect the U.S. Constitution, to make sure government officials obey the laws that the American people have expected from them, or obey the laws as the American people expects from them. And there's really nothing comparable in the United States, let alone the world, to what Judicial Watch does. So, you know, we're just not going to give up, you know, within reason, because sometimes we, you know, just don't have a way to move forward in a court if the court rules against us. But we're persistent where we can be. We're persistent where we can be. Oh, you know, I want to talk about Chris Wray again, by the way. We know Chris Wray is corrupt because his FBI agents came to our home, came to my home. And yeah, I'm still outraged about it. And here's a little clip of a speech I gave to CPAC recently on it.
Not too long ago, I had significant skin cancer surgery. And a few hours after I got home, I'm on the couch recovering when the FBI came knocking on my door with a grand jury subpoena from the Biden DOJ. I ended up being hassled and abused by the special counsel team for 4 hours over Trump documents, my First Amendment rights, and what I had for lunch with President Trump. It was a partisan fishing expedition. Frankly, it was like having to spend a day on an MSNBC panel. But I knew why they brought me before that grand jury. It was payback and intimidation for daring to defend Trump against their abuse of power.
That was what I know to be Chris Wray's FBI. I'm the head of Judicial Watch, America's preeminent watchdog organization, the most important group, I dare say, in the country when it comes to government activity, combating government corruption. And for our pains, we get harassed by the FBI under that man's leadership. Inexcusable. I know Trump wants justice. I know other American citizens want justice over these abuses. I want justice, and Judicial Watch wants justice as well, because we've been abused and harassed. And if we've been abused and harassed, that means you've been abused and harassed if you're our supporter, because our work's been impaired by that corruption. So yeah, I'm happy to see Wray go, but I tell you, he still needs to be investigated for what he did. So that was I wanted to get that in there. And despite what it looks like, I didn't break the podium in my speech. I looked angry enough to break it, but I wasn't. I'm very, very soft-hearted in the end. So the lawfare has many elements, and it's harassment, it's retaliation. It doesn't mean you get convicted. It means you get harassed sometimes. It doesn't mean you get prosecuted. It means you get harassed. Elon Musk is facing that. I'm wondering which federal agency isn't investigating Elon Musk as a result of him promoting free speech on Twitter, and even worse, supporting President Trump. And we've seen another example of this in the case of Tulsi Gabbard. Now, Tulsi Gabbard is a former Democrat who has been a critic of the Democratic Party, recently became a Republican, and she's kind of an iconoclast in terms of being skeptical of the military-industrial complex and our intelligence agencies. I don't agree with all of her analyses, but you know, I like the idea that she's out there asking the right questions and is skeptical of the right people. So she's going to be an interesting pick, indeed, as you may know, because Trump picked her to run the Office of National Intelligence, which is really a do-nothing agency. If I were Tulsi, I'd shut it down as director, but I'd shut down most of the federal government. So the left doesn't like her, and some conservatives don't like her because of the issues I've raised. But we can all agree she is no terrorist, and she should not be spied upon and harassed on airline flights, which is what the Biden administration did to her, and which is why we're suing, because we want records on that decision to place her on a terrorist watch list and have federal air marshals harass her and follow her around when she's traveling on planes. I just can't believe. She's a veteran, former member of Congress, and they're treating her like a terrorist. We announced today, yeah, literally today, we filed a lawsuit on December 9th against the Department of Homeland Security, which oversees the federal air marshals and Transportation Security Administration, for records on former Representative Tulsi Gabbard being targeted for surveillance under the Transportation Security Administration's Quiet Skies Terrorist Watch Program. The TSA is a component of the Department of Homeland Security. And so we filed the request on December 9th of the lawsuit, and we wanted to expedite it. And we're expediting it under the court responded to our request for expedition, told us to do certain things, and we're going to comply with the order. So we want to rush this because it's important that we get this information, given the fact she's up for nomination, and we want to expose what went on and hopefully hold those responsible accountable. So that's why we're seeking to expedite the lawsuit. On August 4th, 2024, it was reported that several federal air marshal whistleblowers have come forward with information showing that U.S. Representative and presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard is currently enrolled in the Quiet Skies program. On August 23rd, a congressional committee wrote to the TSA confirming that she was added to the Quiet Skies program on July 23rd, 2024, one day after she criticized the administration in an interview. According to the DHS website, Quiet Skies is a tool that allows the Federal Air Marshal Service to more efficiently deploy law enforcement resources to focus on travelers who may present an elevated risk to aviation security. In what universe does Tulsi Gabbard represent an elevated risk to aviation security? Do I believe there's any legitimate intelligence that would warrant placing her on such a list? I do not believe it for 1 second. Even if they presented it, I would say it's made up. How about that? That's how corrupted do I think what happened to her is. But I want the information so everyone can judge whether it's legit. Because they smeared her, in effect, by putting her on this list. Obviously, it was going to get out. And she talked about it a little bit, I guess, on Twitter or on X not that long ago. Let's play a clip from her statement on it.
My own government has placed me on a secret terror watch list, targeting me as a potential domestic terror threat. On August 4th, Federal Air Marshal whistleblowers came forward with very disturbing information. They revealed that I had been added to a secret terror watch list run by the TSA called Quiet Skies on July 23rd. This is the very same day my husband and I began to be subjected to those in-depth TSA searches. These are images of the TSA targeting package that the air marshals were given as part of their mission brief. I later learned that at least 3 air marshals were assigned to watch me every time I traveled, in the airport and on the flight. TSA deployed explosive K-9 detection teams and a TSA explosive specialist. Now, this is extreme by any measure. What were they looking for? What kind of threat did they think I posed? What were they afraid that I was going to do?
I can't believe they did that. I just think of what the threat matrix is likely for our aviation industry, our domestic airlines, international travel, et cetera, and how few air marshals we have at the federal level to provide security. And they're focused on a political hit on Tulsi Gabbard. This is what it was, assigning them as a political operation. Or so I allege, right? And how do I know there's something there? Well, because they've ignored our request. We asked for the records. When did we ask for the records? Click on the lawsuit. Let's bring it up. I want to see what we asked for. Oh, we asked for the records on August 5th, 2024. And I believe they gave us a number, right? And then they asked for 10 extra days, which they can, citing unusual circumstances. And it's been crickets since then. The Biden administration's decision to place Tulsi Gabbard on a terrorist watch list is abusive on its face. Given her pending nomination to Director of National Intelligence by President Trump, the issue should quickly be cleared up and those responsible be held accountable. So we're moving this case speedily along as much as we're able under law to get these records and figure out what they were doing and why they dared place an American citizen on a terrorist watch list who was a former member of Congress, active presidential candidate, active public speaker, a likely, her being part of the Trump administration has been talked about since Trump's been running. And she criticizes Biden, and the next day she gets put on this terrorist watch list. Who are they fooling? And the fact they're not giving us documents or not responding at all suggests they have something to hide. So once again, Judicial Watch is doing the heavy lifting to expose outrageous government corruption and retaliation by the deep state. I mean, this Biden administration punishes all its enemies wherever it can. I think the record demonstrates that through abuses of power. We've never seen anything like it. We really haven't. I mean, the president isn't running the agencies. It's clear. It's like, do whatever you want, get away with whatever you want. As long as it's political, as long as it's abusive, it seems those are the standards for agency action on matters of national security and law enforcement. And of course, Judicial Watch already has exposed how the federal air marshals were deployed to the border to make sandwiches for aliens crossing the border at the invitation of Biden, the Biden invaders, rather than doing their jobs. And then now we find out they're being tasked with basically tailing Tulsi Gabbard. But what jobs aren't they doing in terms of protecting the American people? That's what's scary about it. So we hope to find out how this happened to Tulsi Gabbard. through our litigation. That's what I love about Judicial Watch. No matter the issue, we can investigate it. Because the government's up to no good in virtually everything that we're concerned about. And because it's the government, we have the law available to us to ask questions about what it's doing. And there's accountability. It's not perfect, but there's accountability through that process. And Judicial Watch is second to none in ensuring government accountability through transparency. And we do it, again, with your support, and I encourage you to support Judicial Watch, especially as we come to the end of the year. Go to judicialwatch.org. Support us. Make a donation. Buy my new book. Buy merchandise at our store. There are all sorts of ways to support Judicial Watch. And if you can't support us with a donation, support us by spreading the word about us to your friends and family. Promote us. Because our work's essential to the America we love. With that, I'll talk to you here next time on the Judicial Watch Weekly Update. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.